Welcome back to First Look, where we give you a sneak peek at an upcoming game that you might not have heard of or seen anything about. And this one is called Seas of Havoc from Rock Manor Games. It's their next one, and this is built around a pirate theme, but it also has two main mechanics, and one of which is going to be worker placement, and the other one, probably some little deck building.
Yeah, and the game is kind of divided up into two phases for those different aspects of the game. And you can see that on the game board. If you want to take a look at that board really quick, you'll notice that it's divided into two sections. The middle section, which is the sea, this is where you're actually going to be battling other pirates, sailing your boats, picking up treasures and things like that. And then along the outside of the board, you have the different islands you can visit, or actually you're sending out these little skiffs, which serve as workers by going out to these islands and taking the action printed on the island. So you're going to be using these two sides of the board in different ways.
Yeah, it's broken into two phases. Every round, if you will, is going to start with the island phase. This is where you're going to use those skiffs that Ryan just mentioned to go out to the islands and do worker placement sorts of things. You're going to be collecting a few different things that you're going to be spending, resources, if you will. Sails, which are going to help you navigate. Some cannons, which are going to be in the form of these little cannonballs that you're going to add. And then some money. Now, a lot of these spaces are fairly self-explanatory. You're going to go there and maybe take first player in one of those things, a bunch of sails, a bunch of cannonballs. Right. But there are some really interesting spaces here to go to, and this is, I think, where the worker placement really changes things up. Across the top of the board, you're going to see these four colored flags. Those two are places where you can take your skiffs and acquire those flags. These have unique and one-time effects when you acquire them, but those effects are also going to have some impact on the cards that you acquire and use in the deck building side of the sea phase. The other place are those cards themselves, because down at the bottom of the board, you can, instead of placing your skiff on one of those positions I mentioned, you can simply place it on one of those cards. That's going to be a card that you can then acquire at the end of the island phase. If you are able to spend the resources needed, you can take that card, and when you take it, you're not putting it in your discard pile.
Right.
You're putting it straight into your hand. So this is going to be a card you're going to then use or be able to use in the sea phase, which is the next part.
Yeah, and you can kind of combo together those cards that you're using with those flags in a way that feels very thematic to being a pirate. You're raising up the different colored flags. But all of those cards that you're gathering, and even some of the resources that you're gathering, are going to be very useful in the sea phase, because that's when you're actually taking tactical actions to try to position yourself in such a way that you can do damage to other ships, either by ramming into them or, better for you, firing your cannons at them. All of your actions at sea are controlled by the cards that you have, the cards that came in your base deck and the cards that you purchased along the way. These cards are going to allow you to take actions like turning your ship or moving a certain number of spaces, all with the intention of getting your broadsides in such a way that you can fire those cannons, provided that you did get the cannonballs during the worker placement phase. So you really need to balance out your different actions. Plus, everyone is going to have a little bit of an asymmetrical start with some special cards that get added to their deck, a special captain that you can have, and your own ship, which comes with 2 upgrades. So over the course of the game, you could actually kind of go with different routes from your opponents, and you're going to be building out different decks that work with different flags. So there's a lot of different synergies you can find and a lot of different directions you can take it in order to build your ship to the way you like to play.
Yeah, you're doing this all in the pursuit of infamy, of course, and there's lots of different ways to score infamy. You're going to get it on the cards that you acquire. You're going to get it when you upgrade your ships. You're also, of course, going to get it when you successfully attack people or ram people out here. Now, the other thing that happens with all of that in the sea phase is damage. Damage is going to get doled out in a few different ways. When you attack someone with cannon fire, of course, it's going to do damage. They're going to take one of these cards and put it in their discard pile. This effectively clogs up their deck temporarily, but also at the end of the game, any damage cards in your deck are going to be -1 infamy. Now, the other side of that is you're going to gain infamy when you do something like that. Also, if you collide with someone, you're going to cause damage potentially to them, potentially to yourself, because there are some rocks out here. So if you run into rocks, you're going to take a damage card into your discard pile. But there's a few different ways to score that infamy. Now, there are ways to get rid of the damage. You're going to naturally be able to get rid of that. There's some spaces on the board like the Deep Cove where you can call cards out of your hand. So this is a big game about moving around a board, but also really managing not just
hand management
and deck management for sure, because you don't want that game to end before you've gotten rid of some of the damage in your cards. And the game is going to be ending based on these damage cards.
Yeah, and you're setting aside a certain number of damage cards for player count or whatever, but really you're trying to do as much damage as possible. That's really the key to the game. Because the game, like I said, doesn't, or like David just said, doesn't end until you're through all those damage cards. But provided that the game is still going, you're just going to go back and forth between these two phases in player order, going from the island phase to the sea phase and back and forth until that deck is gone, in which case you're just basically totaling up your infamy.
Yeah, and the other really cool thing, I think, about the sea phase, like I'd mentioned those flags in the island phase, are those flags on all of the cards that you can acquire. A lot of those, or all of them, will have one of those flags listed across the bottom. When you successfully use a card you've acquired like that, if you happen to also have that flag in front of you, and those flags can bounce around the table because they can be taken from you and whatnot. But when you do that, you're able to use that card not only for its maneuver, but also, or instead of, you can use the flag power when you do that. So you're able to build a deck that's based around maybe acquiring certain types of cards, keeping a hold of certain flags, and really getting a lot more out of your turn than you could potentially could. Because if you don't do that, you could find yourself with just the 4 cards in your hand and maybe not being able to do nearly as much as your opponents at the table.
One thing that I think people are really excited to hear, or we're really excited to talk about, is that this game does play from 1 to 5 players. So right there is a solo mode for that game, for this game. And our own Jeremy Howard is going to be doing more of an in-depth look at the solo mode. So if what you're seeing here is very interesting to you and you're a solo gamer, we haven't played solo yet. So I'm going to be watching to see how that solo game plays because it seems like it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've played this at 3 players a couple times. Ryan and I played it at 2. And at 2-player, you play with 2 ships each, but just still 1 captain. But yeah, Jeremy's going to have, if it's not up already, very soon he's going to have a live play, a full playthrough of the solo mode of this game. But whether it's solo mode or 1 to 5 players, if you have any questions about the game that we haven't answered here, please make those comments down below, and we'll try to answer what we can. Of course, look out for their campaign, which is going to be happening in early February. That's about the same time that we're going to have the solo play live, for sure. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.